up, and we're into our second round now. One thing I'd like to say, a little bit of housekeeping before we get into this. If you have any questions, comments, etc., we have the chat functionality available. And just so everyone's aware, there is the group chat that everybody can see. But there's also a presenter chat. So if you have a question that you would like to direct to me personally, or if maybe you don't want it to be shown to the group or whatever the case may be, just send it off in the presenter chat. We had quite a few questions on the last one, so hopefully it's the same on this one. But the questions we will address when we get to the end of the presentation here today. But don't be scared to write them down as we go. If you get a chance, maybe just drop an okay or a hello in the chat box so that we know that that's working for you guys as we go through this. We'll keep an eye on that. And like I said, just write it down in the chat, or if you want, we can bring it up at the end when everything's done. So first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Stuart Marshall. I'm the Business Development Manager for Automated Milking Systems for the US. And today we've put together a bit of a presentation, a bit of an event, let's say, where in the last couple of weeks we've had the opportunity to get out and visit with some of our existing customers, some of them newer, some of them not so new, and really just to kind of highlight, understand the experiences and the, I guess, the successes that they've had with the technology. And so it's kind of an exciting event. It's obviously a little bit of a different taste with COVID that we're all dealing with, but we're making the most of it. So, again, I have a little bit about myself. I've been working with GIA, with automated milking systems now for into my 9th year. Robotic milking systems overall for about 15 years, and been involved with the dairy industry my whole life. And so today we're going to step through a couple different pieces of technology that our customers are using. And we're actually going to start off, well, we've got an agenda. We'll run through our agenda really quick. And then we're going to start off looking at our DairyProQ technology. But first up, we'll take a quick look at our agenda here. And so we have a couple different farm families that we're going to highlight today. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the DairyProQ and just kind of what that system's all about. It's a little bit of a new system. Not everybody's necessarily familiar with it. And then James Bringy, one of our sales managers, he recently had a chance to get out to Clover Hill Dairy and catch up with them just to see how things have gone since their startup and how life is going with their DairyProQ. And then at the same time, he was able to spend a little bit of time out in the parlor and just basically give us an update on some of the features that come with that equipment. And then we're going to switch gears a little. We're going to move to the DairyRobot, the R9500 system, which is more of the voluntary box-style robotic milking system. We're going to visit with the Lenkaitis family. And then we're going to touch on some of the highlights of that system as well. And then we're going to go back in time a little bit, and we're going to catch up with our very first customer in North America that installed one of our systems, and that's 5 years back now. So that's kind of what we're into here this morning for everybody, just so we're all clear. So first up, I'd like to talk a little bit about the DairyProQ product line itself and what we see. So I would say about a year and a half ago, I became more or less fully involved with the DairyProQ product. Prior to that, it was mostly all box experience. And it's really been an interesting learning curve for myself to see the differences, because this is really a hybrid of a system. When I say a hybrid, of course, it's very similar to a conventional rotary parlor, but there's a robot with every cow in this system. So a lot different than what we've traditionally thought of when we've talked robotic milking on dairy farms. So this particular product, it's quite interesting, I have to say, because, you know, when you hybrid these two technologies together, in the past we really only had to talk about cows and robots. And when we look at the DairyProQ, we have a third, basically a third factor that comes into play, and that's the people that work with the system as well. And so it's been really, really amazing actually to spend the last year and a half and working with these customers and help them optimize their DairyProQs. And we're really starting to do some things that I would say haven't been done before in terms of throughput with robots and some of the achievements that we've been making. So next up, we're going to look a little bit at the Clover Hill Dairy. Now, Clover Hill, they're using a DairyProQ, and they're going to kind of highlight for us their experiences, what that's looked like, how it's gone for them. And I was lucky enough this summer, I had the opportunity to go and head up the startup for this dairy. It was a great experience. We had a lot of fun and we learned a lot, that's for sure. So up next, we have a video we're going to play for you guys. This is Clover Hill Dairy. They're milking about 1,800 cows on a 50-stall DairyProQ.
We've been here, this is fifth, in fact, Sarah and Brett are fifth generation on this dairy, so it's been around a while. We started like everybody else. I guess back in the early 70s, we were milking 60 or 70 cows, and somehow things just keep growing. And we, over the years, we were actually milking out of 2 parlors for 20 years. And we've been in a milking parlor for 40 years. So milking in a parlor situation for us has been something we've done for a long time. And as time went on, we outgrew both of those parlors and got to the point where we needed to do something different. And I guess at that point we started looking around at different facilities and things we could do. And I guess way back 5-6 years ago already, we've been waiting for robotics. That's something that we wanted to do. And I guess I'll let Sarah or Brett tell the story how we got to this.
Like Dad said, I think we knew we needed a new parlor. We wanted to update things. And when we started looking around at parlors, we all kind of were in agreement that we wanted something that was going to help us cut our labor, robotics involved. But I think it took a while for that process to evolve and for us to find something that we were comfortable with. For me, it all came down to labor. It was 100% labor. We actually have a wonderful core labor force on our farm. Some people have been with us for 25 years. But there's always that kind of revolving door at the bottom. We were having a really hard time the last probably 2-3 years keeping a solid milking staff on our farm. And that's such a vital piece of our labor force, having a knowledgeable group of people that can milk cows and do a consistent and quality job. That's, I guess, for me was why the robotics were so important, to try and make the job of our milkers a little bit easier, to have that consistency and quality in our milking. We kind of started out looking at traditional rotaries, and I guess we pretty quickly figured out that wasn't what we wanted to do, and that transitioned into looking at box robots. We spent a lot of time actually kind of going down that path, figuring out what that was going to take for our farm, and then somebody, I guess, gave us a nudge to look at the DairyProQ parlor, and that was the path we eventually went down.
Right. So in general, I mean, a big factor for you as a family to look at automation was mostly driven by labor utilization. Were there other factors that really came into that decision-making process, as we just talk about automation in general, besides just labor?
I think it was, like I said, the consistency, and just knowing that as much as we work with our milkers on trying to always use that consistent milking process and the quality milk that we wanted, mastitis prevention, all that kind of stuff, just knowing that the robots would provide that consistency that we wanted. I guess looking at the future of our labor force, just knowing that there's a lot of people out there that are interested in technology and robotics and not really interested in just sitting there milking a cow manually by hand.
Sure.
So trying to attract good employees to our farm.
So from the equipment standpoint, philosophically, maintaining equipment, who works on it? How did you discuss that as a family? Because again, whether it's a box-style robot or DairyProQ or even a conventional parlor, maintenance, service, it's all a real factor you have to consider. So did you have a process for that, or?
No, well, we felt that someone young was probably the best avenue to go down because of, let's face it, some of the older generation doesn't adapt well to technology. So we had a young kid that was eager to learn and become more of a bigger role in the dairy, and he took it and ran with it, and he's now taking part in maintaining and fixing and being a big part of maintenance, honestly. I would say a lot of our maintenance is done in-house.
Okay.
Trenton is his name. He comes in every morning before milking starts, and he goes through and looks at what modules need to be looked at, what the reports of what needs to be looked at on each individual robot, and he goes through that. If it's something major, him and his dad can tackle that maybe after the milking is done at night.
One thing I want to add, as we looked at robotics, two things. Like I said, we've always milked in the parlor, well, not always, but for 40 years we've been milking cows in the parlor, so we knew that routine. And when we looked at boxes, we had to change our complete management style. When you have to retrain people, it's always a task. Yeah. It can be done. I know it can be done. I know guys that did. But this gave us the opportunity to pretty much operate the way we always have been. And so it really fit pretty well. The other thing that I love about this system is if we get a robot that goes down, no matter when it is, it doesn't slow us up. We put a barrel in the stall and keep milking cows, and when we have time to look at it, we take care of it. To me, that's huge. If we had, as a family, would have to have somebody come in the middle of the night and fix a box, that's always a challenge, because now there's somebody that's always on call, and this just made more sense.
I think we compared boxes to the parlor, and the price was really pretty similar when you took out the life of the parlor, when you compared it over the life of the parlor. And I think we decided that we wanted to, for one thing, we wanted to do it all at once. We didn't want to have to do it incrementally with boxes, with the buildings and the freestyle barns. And like Joe said, the ability to maintain our management style with the parlor was huge. Right. Not having to have, like most of the people we talked to, if you had to have a manager for almost each barn. Well, we have, multiple freestyle barns, so that would mean, somebody being on call all the time, probably getting calls every night. Wanted to avoid that, and just to get it done and over with, I think, and was a big part of it. Not to be in transition for 4, 5, 6 years trying to, do barn by barn by barn.
What excites you about this type of technology? So what do you see today? What do you think about in the future? Do you have thoughts on that?
I guess for me, it's knowing that it's pretty young technology yet, and some of the things that we know we're going to be able to do in the future, and add to the system even. It would be someday, I'm sure we'll put on the add-on for having the cell count right in line with the milking. Mm-hmm. So we'll have that information. We already have loads of information that we're still figuring out how to decipher every day, but that would be an additional piece, or maybe like butter, fat, and protein in the future. All things that we can use when we're having our management decisions with cattle. Just knowing, like I said, I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Sure.
One thing I'm excited about is I think once we put this in, our farm went from being, let's just be real, like, milking cows is not glamorous, but this job down here now became a desirable job.
Sure.
And I think milking cows now is something that people are proud of, rather than just going to work and milking a cow. And I think the rest of our people that work here are very proud to be working here because of what we stuck into it and the amount of technology, and it's a lot of cool things came from this, and I think people are proud to be associated with it.
What excites me? Well, I think from Chris and I's standpoint, this year probably made the transition a little easier for us to that generation. I mean,
Sure.
They're very involved, but I think now that this is in place, it took the tension off the milking facility, because now we can milk our cows in 8 hours. We milk twice a day, and hey, there's time to do things, so
Yeah.
it works out well.
Can we talk about the startup process? So 12 months, we get this thing built, and it's time to milk cows. And how did that go? How was your experience? What would you say to producers that would,
I only have one word. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I personally, and I know Dad was too, extremely apprehensive leading up to that, because you just don't know what's going to happen. But knowing, though, in the back of our minds that we were going to do whatever it takes to make it work, because, we got the investment, and that's just kind of how we do things on our farm. We make it work.
I can see.
I mean, if you think you're going to build one of these, any new thing for an animal, like a cow, to go through and think they're just going to be happy to do it and just walk on, you're wrong. I felt like this parlor was a lot easier than the last parlor that we had to teach our cows. We still had to nudge them on and make sure that they wanted to do it. And after, I think, the first time, they went on a lot better than the second time was better than the first, and so on and so forth. And it only took probably 3 milkings, I would say, and we didn't really have to babysit too much anymore, which was awesome. So.
I would say a critical part of our success in the startup was the team we got from Gia, and I think and the dealership, and they guided us through the best way to do it. Adjusted our crew we had there to start. They had specific ideas in mind and what they wanted in the people that were going to help with the startup, and the way they wanted to do it, and guided us through that, and it went, like he said, it was amazing.
One big question a lot of producers have related to that is, in boxes, not every animal conforms to automatic milking. And the same is true on a rotary parlor and or DairyProQ rotary parlor. So dairy customers are fearful that, 10% of my herd might not make the cut. What was your experience as far as the transition period, percentage of herd? I don't know how you want to speak to that, but...
A percentage, I guess, is the easiest way to do it. We probably, well, not probably, we had just about 1% of the herd that didn't make it on wheel. It's just slightly over that, which I thought was really good. Some of the older cows just didn't adapt quite the way they should have. They struggled a little bit. So no, we didn't hardly have any problems at all.
Yeah. So at transition, you started with 1,800 or 1,600, and then added a few more in.
We actually ended up with about 17 or 18, about 1,800, and that took us about, not really, about 10 days, and we had them all on, almost all of them, which was really quick.
So day-to-day changes in your work life on the farm since DairyProQ. Can you speak to that? What's changing day to day in your operation because of the DairyProQ?
I think for me, one of the bigger changes has been I spent an awful lot of time in the last couple of years constantly recruiting and training help. And that has, the brakes have been put on that, thank God. But I definitely have spent a lot more time with data, I think. from Dairy Plan than I probably did in the years leading up. And part of that is just trying to figure out the computer system and figure out which data we need and which is, what the helpful stuff is day to day. There's just so much of it, trying to weed our way through it, I guess. But I spend a lot less time looking for employees, thankfully. The other thing, I think Dad had kind of alluded to this before, but for all of us probably, more so Dad and I, but trying to push the cows through our parallel parlor, getting them through twice a day was such a challenge, and every little hiccup that we had, it was shuffling people and trying to get our maintenance people in here to fix things before we had to start up for our next shift, and that has been really great to just kind of not worry so much.
Stress levels are down. So what I didn't hear you talk about was, and this, again, I don't want to speak for you, but part of your reason for buying this over a box was, no changes in your your herd manager's role. His life really continued on as it had been, right? And so
I think the one thing that maybe has changed for them, for all of us really, has been mastitis detection, because that's world's different here than it was in the parallel parlor with never stripping cows and whatnot. But other than that, they still have the same breeding schedules, the same foot trimming schedules. We don't have to work around the boxes, and we can manually sort cows when they exit the parlor, just like we always have. Mm-hmm. So it was a relief not having to rework our entire herd management system.
Why should other dairy producers consider investing in this type of technology? And again, the technology could be in a box style stall or rotary, but you can speak to the rotary because you have that. We talked about labor a little bit, management, but...
Well, labor's a huge issue, and I know most of us have those issues. I don't think it's going to get any better. So that's certainly a good reason to do it. My personal belief is that in the next 10, 15 years, whatever it might be, a vast majority of cows will be milked by a robot. I guess if you're milking your own cows in a smaller herd, and you're able to do it yourself, that may not change. But to be really honest, if you've got to try to find somebody to stand in a parlor or wherever and milk cows for 8-10 hours a day, nobody wants to do that anymore. It's just not very glamorous, and there really ain't enough pay. I know one thing, you couldn't pay me enough to stand in a parlor and milk cows anymore. I did it for a lot of years, but this actually just makes the employees and everybody their life a little easier. And I think that's one good reason to look at something like this.
And your dealership support. So important part of the process is service, installation, and support. Can you talk about your dealership experience and anything related to that? If there's
personally, I've been extremely impressed. I think that they made as much of a decision to do whatever it takes to make this work as we did. I don't think it would have went as smoothly if we had selected a different dealership. So that's been another instrumental part to making this whole thing go. I don't know. I think they've been extremely...
Right. Yeah, support was great. The Central Ag Supply that is our dealer, that they've had a lot of experience with robots and boxes, and I think that was helpful a little bit. They kind of knew, what we were kind of getting into, and that certainly helped. In the knowledge they have of milking cows with robots was really good. Did they have a lot of knowledge about this system? No, and they would admit that. They learned with us. But I can pretty much say that our guys here that do our service work in farm, Trenton and his dad, probably know almost as much as the dealer does right now. But that's because the dealer was willing to really work with us and to guia people too. They've got a couple service guys there that their goal is to get you to do your own work here. And it worked out great. It really did.
That's great. I mean, that's a great experience. I mean, that makes that transition so much easier. Thank you for taking the time to talk to other producers a little bit about the process, your experience, and your success. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, it was great to hear from the folks at Clover Hill and catch up with James and how they've been doing out there. It's, that was a really impressive startup there. It was a real team effort between the dealership, Central Ag Supply, between GAM, between the customer. And we achieved some, in my opinion, some pretty groundbreaking things. To be able to train 1,800 cows on robots in 10 days, I would say formerly was unheard of. And I think now it's probably becoming like the new benchmark. So it was absolutely quite an experience. And yeah, definitely we've achieved some things there that we will not forget, that's for sure. We won't be forgetting for a long time. So while James was there, he had an opportunity to spend some time out back around the parlor. And we've just made a short video here that we're going to highlight some of the features and just some of the functionalities of the machine. So we'll play this video for you and then we'll be back with you.
So at this facility that we're at today, we have a DairyProQ, a 50-stall installation, and we'll talk about some of the features and benefits of the DairyProQ, some of the layouts, and some of the operational sequences going on behind me. So as you can see off to my left here, cows are coming up into the holding pen, and they're coming up into the parlor in a single file lane onto the parlor. At that point, the cows are identified via an ear tag, so we do need identification on these systems to let us know the animal status, and she's qualified to be milked. So that's what's happening behind us. The cows come up on, we're reading their ear tag, identifying the cow. What's happening in the first two stall positions at that point is the automatic milking arm is coming underneath the cow, presenting itself, and the camera is identifying the teat placement. And at that point, the units will be attached. We'll go down below and take a look at that in a little bit, but at that point, the complete milking process starts as we put the cups on each individual teat, start the inliner process for teat prep, cleaning, milk analysis. The actual milking process will take place, and then post-dipping will occur on the exit side of the parlor. There's generally one operator in a facility like this. He roams this third of the parlor. He's watching the entrance area as cows come on, assisting them if there's any problems. Perhaps it's a new animal that's not quite ready to come on. He might walk over there and encourage her a little bit. Or it could be an animal who's identified as a manual attachment. And we'll take a look at that when we're down below. So on the entrance side of the parlor again, the operator has access to pertinent information to keep the system running. Behind me is one of the touch screens that the operator looks at visually to see the milking process around the parlor. And each part of that process is designated by a color, so the operator quickly knows what stage of milking is happening on the far side of the parlor. If there's an event or an alert that he needs to be aware of, the stall segment will turn red, and he can walk over to this screen, find out the cow's information, find out what he needs to do, and perhaps he has to make a trip around to the other side of the parlor. In most cases, any issue can be addressed from this screen. So as we look at this screen a little bit, some information that we're looking at here is this parlor is turning at right around 10 seconds per stall, which means we have about an 8-minute rotation if things keep running continuously. He can monitor the
air pressure in the system, that there's teat dip being delivered into the system, but more so from a system standpoint, he keeps track of the processes and what he has to be doing. For the most part, the operator in this facility is managing cows coming into the parlor, looking for attention lights that immediately come on. That would be an animal that needs to be manually attached. And again, by manually attached, we mean the operator will just walk over and assist putting one cup on, not physically doing the entire milking prep process. Once those cups are on, the system takes over and again does the inliner prep process for that animal. So again, applies the teat dip, strips the milk, stimulates, starts the milking process, milks her out, teat dips, and then removes the unit. So from this vantage point, we can see cows coming into the parlor. You'll notice next to the cow's left ear, the green brick, that is the individual ID system. We're reading the ear tag in that cow. That identification is telling the system whether a cow is eligible to be milked or if she's a three-quartered cow or whatever it may be. In this system, we're identifying cows using the ear tag. On other systems where we incorporate full management tags, a tag that does activity, rumination, it could be locomotion, we would be reading that tag underneath the brisket of the neck of the cow. So we're about halfway around the parlor at this point. One thing we want to talk about in the DairyProQ system is that every one of these modules, these robot modules, is really independent from all the other modules on the system. So again, in this system, there's 50 stalls. If stall 1 here would have a problem and needs some either maintenance or some service, the fact that it's not functioning does not affect the other stalls around it. So each robotic arm is independent of the rest of the system. What that means is, if you have a problem at 3 o'clock in the morning, the operator's procedure is very simple. It's to block off that milking stall and have the service manager in the morning address it. So we're on the back side of the DairyProQ at this point. The milking process is generally completed, so the teat cups come off. We have teat dip on the teats. The arm goes back into the home position, rinses itself out, so it's sanitary for the next cow, cleans the camera off, and cows will be exiting behind me. So again, we have a monitor screen that the operator can look at if he's on this side of the parlor. What's important to the operator is to visually see what's going on in the entrance at this point, and he can monitor that from the farm view screen to see cows are coming on, units are being attached, and there's no issues going on over there. The other thing that we're looking at on the back side here, we do have some safety devices in place. So we got a cable that goes around the parlor. If the operator has something going on that's concerning to him, he can stop the parlor from anywhere around it to address the issue. We have a grate all the way around the parlor, both for cleanliness, to clean up, make it easier, and safety for the operator to stand on, and for his comfort. Okay, we're in one of the corners of the rotary parlor facility, and like most rotary parlors, the corners end up becoming offices, break rooms, and in this facility, this type of facility, we want to plan a service room. Service room is important for a lot of reasons. One, we want to have a clean space that both the dealer and the farm maintenance person can bring a service drawer in and do scheduled service or emergency service, whatever is required. So on the wall here, you can see we have some documentation on site, so the on-farm service personnel can troubleshoot, try to diagnose the problem, figure out what's going on, and then take corrective action. So it would be typical on any DairyProQ, we'd want to lay that out, training both dealer service personnel and on-farm personnel the week prior to startup and during startup to really bring some of that skill level up so that they're prepared long-term to service a unit like this.
All right. Well, I think that that little video description does a nice job of highlighting some of the features, and I think that that service room, touching on that's an important part of the discussion as well, so I'm glad that James did that. So we'd like to change direction a little bit here now and move towards the R9500, the voluntary robotic milking system. And before we get into, let's say, the nuts and the bolts of all of it, there's a few things I'd like to talk about, things that I've witnessed over the last years that are pretty important if you are thinking about making the move to a voluntary milking style system. And, you know, when you look at your daily routine today, obviously that you have some certain things that you deal with outside of milking, such as training new animals, breeding, dry-offs, all those sorts of things. And it's really important as you make a transition into a voluntary milking system that you keep in mind how you're going to deal with all of those activities and that workload. And the reason I say that is, you know, and we've seen this in the past where somebody would put in some robots and maybe it wasn't the best thought out plan. And, you know, I'm talking in the past 15, 20 years ago now, especially when the learning curve was early. And, you know, the robots would milk the cows, but then there's all this other work that you have to do, like I said, the dry ops, the breeding, and nobody really thought about that. And it's really, really important that you step through in your mind what that's going to look like in your new facility or in your retrofitted facility as you make these decisions. So we have a barn design here that we're going to show you. This was originally an installation that we did in British Columbia, actually, out in Canada. And it's since been replicated a number of times, and with good reason. This is a barn that really takes a look at taking all those chores and making them as efficient as possible, because you have to remember there's things like training new animals, fetch zones, how you're going to breed a cow. All of those things still have to be thought about. And, you know, even something as small as the fact that, you know, in this particular design, let's say the fetch cows and the fresh cows don't have to share the same robot. And when it comes to labor efficiency for doing chores, for example, in the morning, that's a pretty big win for someone. So overall, there's just a lot of things that we try to advise you to think about, and we have some barn design specialists that can help with that thing as well. And it doesn't matter if it's a new facility or a retrofit, but again, I'd just like to point out how important those things are, regardless of what type of technology you're putting in the center. That doesn't change how we have to work with a cow, that's for sure. So we have keeping in tune with our R9500 theme here, we have a family, Sarah and Andy Lenkaitis. They're in Illinois. They're milking about 100 cows. It might be 110 now. I'm not exactly sure, on 2 of our R9500 robots. And it's this video is impressive for me. I was involved a little bit with their startup a few years back, and it was interesting because, of course, it was in the first days of things when things are still quite hectic for a new owner. And it's nice now to look at this video and see how they've gone from one side of the learning curve to the other side of the learning curve. It's really quite impressive. So in this video, Robin, our marketing director, she had an opportunity to get out to the dairy within the last couple of weeks and catch up with Sarah and just kind of give us an update of how things are going and how they're handling the operation. So we're going to watch that video now.
One of the things we wanted to focus on today was giving our viewers a little look into what your typical day looks like. So one of our questions I want to start off with right in the beginning is, when you wake up in the morning, what does a typical day look like for you, with a robot farm?
Sure. I think that was probably one of the biggest changes for us was before we built the barn that we're in now, we were in a 37-stall tie stall barn. So then we would wake up at about 5, start milking at 5:30, and then you'd milk all the cows, shut the vacuum pump off, and clean up the milk house, and feed calves, and kind of go on with your daily chores. And then you'd repeat that again in the evening. So the different part about being in this barn with the robotic milkers is everything's kind of always on. So the robotic milkers are available to the cows 24 hours a day, except for 2 hours when they go into the system wash. And so we can get alarms at any time of day, or there might be something that needs attention, and it doesn't necessarily happen at a certain time of day. So that kind of dictates sometimes how our day goes. But generally speaking, we still come down to the barn in the morning and feed our calves. We will check our fetch list to see if there's cows that we need to bring into the robot that need to milk. That's the time that we'll also check our activity monitor to see how the cows did the last 24, 48 hours to see if anyone is off on their eating, rumination, or inactivity. We'll also look at a milk deviation report to see if anyone is down in milk the last 24 hours. And so that'll kind of dictate who we need to go out and take a look at. So that'll be the fetch cows, and then anyone that alarmed for milk deviation, somatic cell, or any of those eating or rumination alarms. And after we kind of take a look at those cows, we'll, groom stalls and scrape the alleyways. We also feed TMR once in the morning, so we'll drop TMR, and that's usually a good sign too when you put that TMR down to make sure that, a lot of the cows kind of get up and go get that fresh feed. And then we'll kind of just, go on our day from there, and we'll clean the cameras and change our milk filter and just kind of monitor throughout the day how the cows are doing.
You kind of started to answer my next question, and that was kind of the technology behind a system like this and how that changes how you manage your herd. You mentioned a couple of the reports you look at, like deviations and fetch lists and animal monitoring. Can you talk about, maybe use one example, like a milk deviation list? How do you work through that example in your herd? You come in the morning, or you look at the list and you see a couple cows are down in milk. Walk me through what you do then.
Yeah, so it's kind of a great system in that before, really the only milk weights I had were what the milk truck driver picked up every day, and then when we would do our DHI monthly test once a month, and then kind of what you estimated each cow gave when you milked her twice a day. Now I get information for every milking, every cow, every time. And so it's a lot of information to go through, and that's why some of those reports really help kind of bubble up to the top, the cows that need attention. So our milk deviation report shows cows that are alarming because they were off in a quarter or didn't give 80% of their expected milking for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and so you can kind of see what her trend is. And the opposite is true too. So once you treat that cow, it's really great to be able to see the next milking and the subsequent milking after that and that to see how she is trending up in milk or trending up in rumination or in eating time, to know that you diagnosed correctly, you've solved the issue, and she's on the mend. So I think that plethora of information you get makes managing your cows a lot more objective versus kind of the subjective things that I would have to visually observe in our old system when I didn't have the technology.
Yeah. What is one of the most interesting things you've learned now that you have some of this real-time data at your fingertips? Is there something that stands out to you that is like, wow, I'm so glad I have this to help me manage a certain topic?
I think the thing that I've been impressed with the most is the impact of early intervention or early diagnosis. So a cow that has an off day from a digestive perspective, she's going through a small bout of indigestion. It's amazing what you can do from probiotics and supportive fluids before you even have to go to that antibiotic because you catch it early on.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. When you're looking at an individual cow and how they're monitored, again, I wanted us to walk through an example. When you notice a cow is not coming to the box as she normally would, or something's happening odd there, again, can you kind of walk me through what you do?
So we have a modified guided flow barn, so I am able to tell the sort gate that I want to sort an individual cow to our hospital pen. So if I see a cow has alarmed and I've decided that I need to go take a closer look at her, I can say on my MView screen, I can say I'd like to segregate cow 35. And so I'll type that in, and she will, the next time she goes to the sort gate, or I can push her through the sort gate, it'll take her to the hospital pen. And then we have headlocks in our barn, so what I'll generally do is set the headlock and catch her in a headlock. And then I usually go out with my thermometer and my stethoscope, and then just do kind of what the vet recommends for a physical examination.
And what about detecting mastitis? I know some people, they can't picture how that works when they're in a robotic system. Can you kind of walk through where, just briefly, how you kind of monitor mastitis and do detection?
Yeah, so when we originally moved in this barn, our Guillain boxes had a conductivity sensor. And so I would flip through the conductivity charts probably about once a week to see if there were any cows that were spiking in conductivity. We also really rely on DairyPlan when it does tell us that there's a cow that had an incomplete milking. We will go into DairyPlan and look at that cow's milking to see if it was a deviation in a quarter or in all 4 quarters. And generally that'll help you tell if there's mastitis too. You might also even see something come up on the rumination monitor, depending on what type of mastitis and how hard it's affecting her. Sometimes you'll see those cows have high inactivity or even be down on eating and rumination because they're trying to fight that. So we used to use conductivity. Now we have somatic cell sensors in our boxes. We've had them for about a year. So it's just a set of different charts that I use to kind of monitor the somatic cell levels in each of our cows. And it'll show me for each of the quarters and for the entire udder, so I can kind of take a look to see how she's doing. We work very hard to have a good vaccination protocol in place, and then we do treat any mastitis we do find. Every once in a while we do a mastitis PCR to know what kind of bugs we're fighting, and we try to really keep our somatic cell quite low. Our milk processor actually gave us a milk quality award last year for the low somatic cell that we maintained on our farm in 2019, and then pretty much every milk check we're hitting a pretty good level for our somatic cell and our plate count premiums.
Okay, excellent. When you have a cow that you found, ooh, I think she may have mastitis, or I want to take a closer look, do you have to go out and fetch her and then bring her in, or how does that work, or do you try to do certain things out in the headlocks?
Yeah, so that's one of the unique things with the Guillain box that I really like, and it's the ability to work with the cow in the box, and I really don't see that with any other manufacturer. I'll put it on a manual mode and I'll strip to see if I see any abnormal milk in any of them, and if I do, that'll give me the time and the ability to make sure that I can get any mastitis out of that quarter and make sure that it's milked out completely. And then we typically will give a mastitis tube in the box, and then we also use an udder mint as well on that quarter, and that's something that's really great to be able to do in the box.
What is one of your favorite things that you just find helps you in your daily life here on the farm, and just about the DairyRobot in particular that just is a benefit to you?
Yeah, it's really hard to narrow it down to one. I'm actually going to say that there's 2. One is kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, which is just the data. Yeah. Just the amount of data that we get and the ability to make decisions based on the data that you've received is very valuable. Valuable to us as people working with the cows, and valuable to our business. And then the other thing I would say is really great, and it makes working with the cows so much easier, is what we're able to do behind the box. The fact that I can look at a cow, I can put a teat drain in if I need to, or strip out a cow if I suspect that something's happening. Mm-hmm. The ability to go behind the box and work with the cow is really invaluable.
Yeah. Lastly, what advice would you have for other farmers out there who are looking to purchase a robot system, or looking to kind of change up their current milking facility? What advice would you give them, having gone through the transition from a stanchion, tie stall barn to robots? What would you tell people?
That's a great question. I think one thing that we struggled with, and when I think about it in retrospect, I'm like, why did we struggle with this so much? But it was believing the data. So believing that that this cow had an incomplete milking, hey, I really need to check her. Or seeing that a cow is off on her activity one day, hey, I really need to go check her. Like, just not ignoring what the data is telling you, because and even from the perspective of the entire system too, say the system sends a certain alarm saying, you know, refill sanitizer, or you know, it's having trouble IDing a cow. You can't ignore those alarms. You have to understand why the alarm is happening, and you have to understand the process to kind of resolve that alarm, because just ignoring it does not solve the problem. And so it's really important to, all the data that the system does give you, you have to review it, and you have to kind of sometimes do a little detective work to understand what it means.
Well, Sarah, I want to thank you for giving us a few moments of your time in your very busy schedule to just share your thoughts with our audience.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's the way of the future, managing your dairy with data. That's for sure. And I think Sarah's did a real great job there of kind of describing how they manage that today. It's an ongoing thing. It doesn't really matter if you're talking what type of robot or automation technology you're talking about today. It's inevitable that data is key to running a successful organization. We do have a little video here next that features Andy, and Andy's going to run through first off some of the sensors and some of the technology that data comes from. And then he's actually going to touch a little bit on our herd management department and how that looks and works, because those are the folks that will actually help you interpret that data once you have it in front of you. So we're just going to play a quick video here for you.
Hey Stuart, just a quick operational note to everyone out there. I see there's a few people accessing the webinar through our mobile app. And just a note, when videos do play, if you aren't seeing them on your screen, you just tap your phone and usually they will just start playing. So if anyone's experiencing that, just tap your phone. Sometimes your phone gives you a cue, sometimes it doesn't. And as well, if anyone's having connection issues, we will absolutely send this webinar out afterwards, and you can view it at another time if you're having any issues. So no worries there. So I will queue up the next video.
Hi, I'm Andy Lenkaitis. I'm a herd management system engineer with Gia Farm Technologies. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the updates to our box style robot, the R9500. One of the things that we've updated is starting at the front of the cow with our feed bowl. We've actually changed and went to a solid cover as well as a air operated door that comes up when the cow is done with her milking interval. That door will raise up and stop the cow from eating any further. Additionally, it also helps prevent any animals from trying to get in the exit side of the robot to try to get up that last little bit of feed that's in there. As we come back along the robot, we have this green cover here, which is our access to our receiver jars, our milk pumps, some of our valves. Again, it's nice and easy to access. We can pull this cover off and get to everything that we need for service and maintenance. Above that, we have our newly relocated dip panel. This panel is relocated from inside the stall. Now it's a lot more easy to access. This panel contains our safety valves, our pre-dip, our post-dip valves, our air valves, and our water valves, which are used in the prep process for the inliner everything of the robot. And it's really just nice that you can get to everything, you can see it, and it's really easy to work on. As we come back further behind the robot, we have our MView screen, which is really our handy tool that kind of gives us our machine vision that we can look in and see what the robot's doing with the animal. What's nice about it is you can put the robot in the manual mode, supervised. You can also control the gates independently for the exit and entrance. And we can also take a look at the individual quarters of the animal, so we can look at what each quarter is doing, know how much each quarter is milked, what their conductivity, any color, sensor values, as well as any milking time on that individual quarter. Then if we continue back, we have really good access to the rear of the animal here. This is really a great place to do any of your dry cow treatments, any mastitis treatments, and really with any fresh animals, it's very handy to be able to get to this back side of the cow, assist that robot in getting on her the first time so she has a good positive experience the first time she's in the robot, which is going to hopefully lead to a better milking experience throughout her lactation. Today I'm going to talk about the M6850 cell count sensor that's available on our R9500 robots. This sensor fits into the existing milking module that we have in the robot. It can be an add-on at the time of purchase, or it can even be added on later on a couple years after installation. This sensor uses real-time information to measure each quarter as the cow is milking. So we have an inlet and an outlet port for each quarter, each of the 4 quarters of the animal. And it senses the somatic cell level in the milk and gives you back information on the class that her somatic cell in that quarter falls into. What makes it very handy from a milk quality standpoint is that oftentimes when a cow does get sick or it has mastitis, it's usually 1 quarter that flares up. You may not notice the increase if you look at the whole udder and look at that pooled milk together, but being able to look quarter by quarter really gives you a very finite information to go into that quarter, make a treatment decision, and try to get that quarter back to a healthy level. This is one way that we have to maintain and improve milk quality on the farm. If we don't have this sensor on farm, there's still other tools that we have available in the robot, such as conductivity and quarter weights, so we can see those in real time on our MView screen, but also all this information is passed back to the herd management software. Once the cow is done milking, every visit it sends that packet of data back to the herd management software. We can then look at that information and know what that quarter is doing for the last milking, the last 10 milkings, whatever we want to look at to see how that animal is doing and help us make some herd management decisions. Ultimately, we have several tools in our toolbox, and we want you to make sure that you can use the tools, use the information, and utilize the data to make the best milk quality decisions for the animal as well as your herd. So what we do in herd management is assist customers in being successful with automated milking systems. A lot of times we're transitioning from a conventional milking system to an automated system, and with that becomes a lot more information, a lot of data that now comes from the milking equipment that you can utilize to better manage your herd. The biggest thing that we see as challenging when we transition from conventional to an automated system is that you need to spend a lot more time here in front of the computer. You're not out there seeing the cows every day. You don't have someone pre-stripping them or taking a look at them, so you need to look at the information that's coming from the robot to really tell you what's going on with the animals and what decisions you may need to make on a certain cow or a certain group of cows to really best use the equipment and your farm. When I go onto a farm, we really look at, how are the cows visiting the robots? How are they doing milk production-wise? Are there anything maybe we're missing out on? Opportunities that we have to improve production, decrease box time, really just make better use of the equipment that we have on the farm. Herd management can entail quite a few different aspects. We often get into the barn and go look to make sure the feed looks right, the waters are clean, the beds are comfortable for the animals. But at the end of the day, we're using the information that comes from the system to show you where the opportunities do exist. So at the end of the day, don't be afraid to reach out to a herd management specialist. We're here to assist. We want to make sure that we're successful in our job so you can be successful in yours.
Very good. Well, I think that's a nice little piece that Andy put together for us and kind of helps us to understand, like I said, where some of that data comes from and how you're going to manage it once you get it in front of you. But that's their specialty. So before we move into our next video, just a little story I wanted to tell about this particular dairy we're going to talk about. It was going back now, probably 7 years ago, and we were in development stages of the monobox / R9500 robot, and I was approached by one of our product managers to see if we would have a test farm that we might like to work with. And I had somebody in mind, and it was Adam at that point in time. And so he had said to me, okay, well, let's meet with him, and we met. And then he said, okay, well, let's see what we can do to make this happen. They seemed like a good party to work with. And the only other thing that he said to me at the time was, make sure you tell your boss about all this. And me not being a big fan of being told no, I actually missed out on that one small detail, and that did make for some interesting discussions between my boss and I down the road, but it was all good. We got the robot here and installed, and everything went quite well. So Adam, R&D Garfat Farms, family operation, they've got a small dairy. They're milking 55 to 60 cows. This was the very first one in North America. The 5th one that we installed globally in the world, so very early adopters of the product for sure. And we've got a video. I had a chance to get out last week and spend some time with Adam. We've just got a video that kind of highlights what his experiences have been like the last 5 years. So here we go.
How have things changed for you really since you transitioned out of a tie stall barn and into a monobox dairy robot dairy?
Flexibility has been a big change for us. The not having to milk at 6 and 6, we're still here early in the morning and here at night times, but it just, the flexibility and the ability for the cows to manage themselves and milk at their convenience is a lot nicer as well.
What led you towards the DairyRobot, and what would your favorite top 2 or 3 features be that kind of led you down this path, let's say?
Yeah, well, when we first started looking for robots, we were looking at the
MI1.
The MI1. So we went and looked at an MI1, and we really liked the features, like the camera with one attach, and it did everything in the teat cup at one time. And then we were approached about doing the monobox, and that met a few of the features that the MI1 didn't have at the time. So it was, we were looking for that one attachment, the camera that could see everything, the old front opening, let the cows in and out real easy, so, and quiet. It's got to be one of the quietest robots operating out there right now. So that makes it really nice to train fresh heifers and stuff like that, because they don't, no weird noises, they don't hear anything. So
yeah, that's always nice to hear. That's for sure. That's for sure. So in terms of the cattle themselves, whether it be fresh heifers, whether it be older cows, do you have any advice for other dairymen that we're getting into this as to what they should maybe think about in terms of heifers or training animals or that sort of thing?
Well, I think if you're, a couple years out and you're looking forward, you really need to, feeding legs and, udder teat placement is just in general makes everything go better. Like this monobox attaches some pretty crazy udders, but you want to look for something that, if you have time, you start looking for good udders, good bulls to breed from. But I don't know, in general, it goes pretty simple. Like our cows are quieter now than they were before, so they're easy to handle. You got to move them out of the way. You walk around the cows. The cows don't run out of the way, so it makes it a lot nicer that way. So it's been good all around for everybody.
Now, one of the things that I really like about your farm, especially for a smaller dairy setup like what you have here with one robot, is the way that you have that pack pen just off the side of basically the robot area, let's call it. I mean, I think that's a great way to manage transition cows and cows that are having a tough time getting up, that sort of thing, maybe just having a rough start.
Yeah.
Would you do that again? Would you do it differently? What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think the bedded pack right next to the robot is a great advantage. We always keep our fresh cows for 2 days on the pack anyway, especially older cows, just to make sure everybody's getting up and down. And so it's real convenient that it's close like that. I would definitely put that into any robot operation, like a spot that has a place where they can get all off concrete, so they can get some good rest. They're easy up and down.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you installed your robots here, and you built a facility. You went with guided flow traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on 5 years of experience with that, what are your thoughts on guided flow?
I would still build guided flow going forward. It's really easy to sort cows out because cows are used to going through gates. And as far as if you needed to put one in the robot, the gates are right there. They easily run around or easily move into the robot with minimal movement. It's one person operation. I don't have to try to force a cow through something that she's never been through before, like if a cow's in heat or whatever. It's a really simple, easy management tool that I really like. So we still get the milkings per day we need. We get the milk per cow we're looking for. So I don't really see a downside. And it also puts the cows, after they milk, they have to go on to they send them to the feed bunk. So it gives them time for them to stand up and let the teat dip dry properly and the teat ends closed as well.
So makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I believe it. How did your numbers do? Speaking of that, when you came from a tie stall into a robot barn, how did your snag cell do?
We've dropped significantly. We've had some of the lowest tests we've ever had, and we've been under 100,000 a few times, so that's improvement. The other barn used to run around 200,
okay,
give or take. So we've seen a significant improvement in milk quality. So
awesome. So looking back now, Adam, you're 5 years in. You know, what advice, both good and bad, would you give to other people looking at this technology these days?
I think you need to be ready to make a change if you're coming from a tie stall or something. Like, it's going to be a big change. You need to be ready to able to adapt to new technology and stuff. But new technology is easy to use and comfort friendly. But it is definitely a different way of looking at things. But going forward, new people that come in all the time, they're, what do you like about it? What do you don't like about it? But, this has been a great system for us, so it works well. And you just need to be able to have a good relationship with the dealer. So that's helpful, and getting your startups and stuff like that, and having a good group of people to support when you're starting out.
When I was walking around out there, I noticed that you still have our feed pusher, the FR1 feed pusher. It's you were again another early adopter of that piece of technology as well. We're getting close to 4 years, I think, runtime on it now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? On feed pushers in general? What do you like about it? What do you dislike?
Our feed pusher has been one of the things that you put in and you forget about it. He's been running. We call him Freddy. It's Freddy the feed pusher. He just does his job day in and day out. He runs every hour except for his recharge time. He's quiet. The cows don't bother. Nobody spooks at him. We've never had him, run away. He's always followed along his path that he's supposed to go on. So he's been a real asset to us here. So,
is there anything to look out for people that are looking at a feed pusher, possibly in terms of design or environment or that sort of thing that you've experienced or you would recommend?
No, it's been pretty good. Like he rolls the feed in gently, so it doesn't stir the feed up too much, so it keeps the feed in the same consistency that it is. Doesn't sort it out or anything. No, he's been really good. So.
Okay, cool, excellent. Yeah, it's quite interesting how much technology you guys took on all at once here.
And we made a few leaps and bounds. Yeah,
that's for sure. Well, I'll tell you, your animals look great out there. They really do, and I think the production shows it as well. That's for sure. So, in terms of day-to-day work that you're doing with the robot, I mean, what does a day in the life of Adam look like? What do you do to keep this thing running?
Basically, the only real maintenance we do in the morning, we have the camera solution. We clean the camera.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a minute or two in the morning, and then at nighttime we use the descaler product that they use to clean the camera to keep the camera lens clean. But other than that, besides washing it up and keeping regular keeping it clean, regular maintenance is just every 3 months or whatever. So basically, my day-to-day chores is to just clean the camera the night and the morning, and then make sure the cows are moving around and check your lists and stuff. But other than that, it's pretty low maintenance day-to-day.
Gotcha. And you're using the Cow Scout system here for activity?
Yeah, we used a combination between the Cow Scout and the milk increase or decrease. We check the daily outputs, and we can get cows a lot quicker, catch heats a lot quicker, silent heats a lot quicker, and I think that's improved our bottom line a lot now. We get cows bred back a little quicker.
So, well, hey, thanks for your time today, Adam, and I guess just to finish things up, first off, we want to thank you. You would like to thank you for taking the risk that you did 5 years ago. And we know, even in this area, this Woodstock, Ontario area alone, I mean, there is a lot of gear robots around here now.
Oh, for sure.
And that all started because of what you guys did and what we were able to put together here. So we're very grateful for that. And we're also very grateful that we could come back and just look back and reflect on the experience of the last 5 years. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, guys, it was great to get back and spend some time with Adam again. Don't get to visit around those parts so much anymore, but definitely a milestone we made there, and it's great to see he's doing well 5 years in. I remember when we led the first couple cows out of the tie stall, I wasn't quite sure what the adventure would look like, and that was a few thousand robots ago, so it's been quite an adventure, let's say that for sure. So just a reminder to everybody, it is time that we're going to do some questions now. Whether we want to put them in the chat, we can put them, obviously you can put them in the group chat. If you're not comfortable with the group chat, you can send them directly to myself or one of the hosts, and we can take care of them that way. I see we've got a couple coming in here now. So yeah, we'll just open it up to that. If you guys have anything you would like to know, like I said, just put it into the chat box and we'll go from there. And I think Robin's going to help us out with those as well as they start to come in.
Yep, Stuart, some are coming in. Like you said, I'm going to switch to your webcam mode. And so we will take a look at the first question that came in was, what stall configurations does DairyProQ come in?
Okay, yep, good question. So it starts as a 28 stall unit and then 32, 40, 50, 60, 72, and 80. But to add to that, what we've recently come out with is the ability to partially load the system. And so what I mean by that is, for example, you could take a 40 stall system and you could outload, 28 or 32 or however many you wanted onto that system. And that way it gives you the ability to grow into the robot a little bit as your herd grows. Not only that, it makes it a little bit more palatable for a smaller herd if you want an alternative. So that's the size ranges today.
Okay. And then a kind of a follow-up question to that was, is there a particular herd size that's better for the DairyProQ versus the box robot? What is your recommendation there?
Yeah, another good question. Bit of a tricky question, I guess. It depends a little bit about what you're looking at. If you have a larger herd with existing facilities, then absolutely DairyProQ is going to be the way to go. I would say that somewhere between that 1,200 to 1,500 cow mark is where it makes a lot of sense to look at the DairyProQ option for sure.
Another question here that just came in, does GIA help with barn design or cow traffic recommendations? That's probably geared toward the box styles.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a gentleman full-time at our Naperville office, and he's dedicated to doing barn designs. A lot of our dealers, depending where they're at in the continent, the country, have a lot of experience doing that also. But we absolutely do, and we have a couple other people, such as myself, that are involved with that as well to help out with our internal designers. So yeah, that's definitely something that we would do, that we'd like to help with for sure.
All right. Yeah, again, if anyone can keep typing in their question into the chat box and we will get to it. But there is one other one here that came in on our host chat. Where are some of your DairyProQs located in the U.S.?
Yeah, so we have one in California, 72 stall. In the Midwest, we have a 60 stall in North Dakota, 60 stall in Minnesota, 40 and a 50 in Wisconsin, 72 in New York, an 80 in Texas, and a 60 in Colorado right now, and a couple more that are going in as we speak. So.
Okay, just giving it a moment to see if anything comes through. Maybe while we're waiting, one of the questions that came in on the last session was a person who had asked about, they were talking about how one of the benefits of box robots is you just kind of let the cow be the cow, and they had some concerns about waiting times with the DairyProQ in the holding area and not pushing cows in. But can you talk about that consideration, like wait times for milking in a box versus a parlor?
Yeah, I think that was a great question in the last one, and I'm glad you asked it again. That's a big dilemma point, especially depending on whom you're speaking with. So I guess there's a few different aspects of that. The first would be when we look at the data today from not just our systems, but the averages across the United States, It doesn't necessarily indicate that if that were true, the cows should be making more milk, and that's not actually what we're seeing. But there's a few different components to that we need to think about. And I think one of the components would be, yes, of course, okay, the cows are coming up and they're spending some time at the parlor in the holding area. If the parlor is designed well and the group sizes are designed well, that shouldn't be a whole lot of time. I mean, if they're spending an hour and a half or 2 hours there, then there's a layout problem. I mean, things should be moving much more fluid than that. Another thing to keep in mind when we talk about voluntary milking is, of course, we get into a scenario with fetch cows. I mean, that's a big part of life with voluntary milking. And when we fetch those cows, we generally tie them up, not tie them up, but hold them up in an area where they have access to the robot so they can get in there and get milked at some point. But that's not always instantaneous. And in a lot of barns designs, it's far from instantaneous. So you end up with cows standing around also, again. And then I think the other point to that's a lot of people forget, you know, if I'm milking my cows 3x on my rotary, whether it be a DairyProQ or conventional even for that matter, you know, every single cow is going to be milked 3 times a day. And when I move into a box environment, I will be, as a goal, averaging in around that 3 mark, which is a good average. However, the reality of that average is it means that there's some cows that got milked 4 times that day and there's some cows that got milked 2 times that day. Now, if it's always the tail enders, super, but we know that it's not always the tail enders. And so as a result, that 3.0 average in robotic milking isn't really quite the same as a 3.0 when we look at parlor milking. So that's how I would answer that one, Rob.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up for this group as well. It looks like that's all the questions we have. Nothing else has come in, so I think everyone's got a chance to type in their questions if they had them, and I think you can just wrap it up.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining today. This is our first attempt at this particular flavor, and so far the feedback's been great, but we're really grateful you guys could join with us. So thanks very much, and we'll look forward to chatting with you guys next time. Bye.